Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and society at large. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio once again Professor Pat Utomi. Prof, you're welcome.
Thank you, Father.
Professor Pat Utomi, household name, on-air personality, is also, among all other responsibilities, he's a board member, board of trustees of the Terra Leadership Foundation. So welcome home once again.
Yes, I'm glad I'm back.
Professor Utomi, as you know, among his many titles, he is the founder and the head of the Center for Values in Leadership that's engaged in the formation of people, projection of good leaders, exemplary leaders, and formation of people in the culture of leadership. Apart from being founding director at the Lagos Business School of the Pan-Atlantic University, he's been involved in leadership, teaching of leadership, leadership coaching, training of people in leadership for many years, and then shot foray into politics and is a politician. But he's been reflecting for many years, apart from being founding chairman of the concerned professionals in this country. In the 90s, in the early 90s, mid-90s, when this country was in the throes of military regime, he brought together concerned professionals for the salvaging of Nigeria. Unfortunately, 25 years after, you're still doing that.
Yeah, sadly. 25
years after the work that he brought concerned professionals to do 25, 30 years ago, he's still doing. Recently, he wrote a book, Why Not? Citizenship, State Capture, Creeping Fascism, and Criminal Hijack of Politics in Nigeria. In this discussion, I want us to reflect on, you are involved in leadership at every level. You are a leadership coach. I am involved in leadership. I'm executive director of the foundation we own together, Terra Leadership Foundation. I'm even also a member of the board of trustees of Center for Values in Leadership. So, is it that we have all failed in our various endeavors to produce leaders?
I think we should be handed red cards. Olodos.
Olodo. I mean, imagine that I am running the Terra Leadership Foundation, and every day we are engaged in leadership issues and how to form good leaders and leaders of integrity, leaders that will promote peace and so on. And in my state, recently, we had an election. And perhaps...
This is supposed to be the Kogi State election.
Yeah, we had Kogi State election, and everybody...
You even dare to call it election?
Yeah, and then it was a sham of an election. Yeah. And I am ashamed to be associated with, that I am from that state, and that this is the kind of thing in the 21st century that is going on in the name of election.
But you see, Father, I think perhaps one should put this in context, and I've tried to do that recently. There was nothing out of context in what happened in Kogi State.
It was not surprising.
It was a progression negatively of a path we're traveling. I felt compelled to explain that Nigeria has never really had elections since the military left. Because there's a sense that people are saying, but this thing should be getting better. The reason many of us kept quiet after 99 was, this should be allowed, learning should take place, people. But as we see very clearly, and many commentators I've seen very responsible say it on TV. I think I saw Victor Ndumegba's interview, I read it just a few days ago, when he said that every election seems to get worse than the one before it.
Yes.
But that is true, actually. If you go back to 1999, the very first one, and the questions have to be asked of people like us, why did we scream more loudly then? But it was in the hope that it will get better, we'll learn and just get better. In 1999, when the elections took place, a number of us were involved in effort to get international observers to come and validate, to give credence to what had been done. We had an institute called the U.S. Nigeria Economic Institute. It was an institute that had Aliko Dangote as president, myself as first vice president, Umar Bagana second vice president. And we thought one of the things we should do is host the American team that came to observe the election, led, of course, by President Jimmy Carter. Had General Colin Powell, had a number of people, former American Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations, who was ambassador in Nigeria many years before that, Prince Lyman. So we hosted them to a dinner at the Transcorp on Nikon, Noga Hilton, as it was back then. Yes. So as they came down, I took advantage of the fact that I had had the privilege of meeting President Carter a few times before that, and just in the run-up to the elections, even had occasion to more or less make a presentation on where I thought Nigeria was going, and to him. And I said to him, President Carter, what was your experience with the elections? Now, Jimmy Carter, who is a man who's very quick to respond and react to things,
he went silent.
He didn't know what to say. And then Prince Lyman pulled me to the corner and said, Pat, you know, between you and I, if the army wanted to give this election a bad name, he tried very hard. He said they saw soldiers carrying ballot boxes in some places. They got to, I think it was the one that really knocked off President Carter, not far outside of Abuja here anyway, driving through about 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon. They went to this polling station. To their chagrin, nobody had showed up to vote.
At 1 o'clock?
At 1 o'clock. They said, how come at 1 o'clock nobody had come to vote? They said, people at the polling station said, we don't know where they have gone. They went further down into Nasarawa somewhere, coming back like an hour later. And every single person registered to vote had voted.
Okay, they checked and they saw.
That everybody had voted full. I think he said one of the delegates, he said, nobody was sick, nobody traveled, everybody showed up.
Everybody
and they all showed up within 1 hour.
Vote, yes.
Within 1 hour, they had shown up, voted. So, obviously, between that conversation and the dinner and President Carter having to make remarks, I think he had found his voice, and he used a diplomatic thing to say, well, the elections seem to have reflected the wishes of Nigerians. And we've been in this business of seem to reflect the wish of people since then. Of course, 2003 was hopeless. 2007 was an outright farce, and it just kept getting worse. And I often get asked, okay, what about 2015? Now, 2015 was a convergence of forces that were fed up with the order.
Yes.
I thought perhaps we should move. Those in power in 2015 were not bloody enough to say, let everybody die, we're going to hold the same. They wanted to, they could have, but the consequences could have been grave for us. And so we had this change, not necessarily because we had a better election. So the change came, and sadly, things have just gotten worse because the respect for the legitimating effect of elections does not exist in the Nigerian political class. The truth is that Nigerian politicians are not Democrats. They don't believe in democracy. They need elections to legitimate their hold on power. It is this dynamic that I'm really trying to explore in my next book. That's really looking at the nexus of legitimacy, citizenship, and state capture.
So what we're dealing with is the whole issue of feudalism. That we are still within the mindset of feudalism. And feudalism whereby the individual who finds himself in a position of power actually captures the state and the resources of the state and perpetuates himself in power. And gets his cronies, around him, hands over. If the law says you cannot continue, you cannot change the term, the constitution says you can't do more than 2 terms, and hands over whatever. And then we see the way the state governors are doing. That one is you finish from House of Rep, you get to Senate. You finish from Senate, you go and become governor. You finish from governor, you
return back to
Senate, and just in power.
But you see, I have tried to attack that whole thing severally over the years by saying, and I believe it deeply, anybody who is in public office, whether it goes from one to the other for 12 years without a break, is a parasite
on the system.
On the system. You're a social parasite. Now, the truth of the matter is that power disconnects people from reality. If for 12 years you've been disconnected from people, you have nothing to contribute that reflects the interest of the people.
Yeah.
So you have to go and live with them again. So if you like power or public office, go away for 4 years, then come back.
Again.
If you are so, loving of the people to serve them. Until we can get constitutional changes like that, we're going to be caught in this state capture thing that will go on until a bloody revolution wipes all of us out. Because that is the only way. Nigeria has no option. It's going to end up there. An American called Robert Kaplan, 20-something years ago, wrote the book, The Coming Anarchy.
The Coming Anarchy.
And we are walking ourselves steadily into that anarchy. I pray and hope that something happens that changes the course of things, but I have no doubt in my mind that if we continue where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, it is said that if you do not change your ways, you end up where you are headed.
Yeah.
And then where we are heading, I am saying all the poor people who run around and collect 1,000, collect 5,000, and then they do whatever the big men say they should do, will they continue to do that?
You see, again, because I've come from different perspectives. My place in this history, if I should say that, is a very interesting one. First, I come as an academic who tries to have a dispassionate, objective, intellectual view. But I also come as a passionate, involved citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I come as an engaged person. Ruben Abati dared to call it years ago, l'homme engagé, the intellectual as a man of action. So I'm embedded. And so I see these strands from different perspectives, and I'm really fascinated. And one explanation I try to give, I was having a conversation with the Kenyan activist, Pierre Lumumba, and he said to me that it is not comprehensible, it's not natural, it's not logical that people continue to vote for people who have squandered their future, who are, obviously from the way they're carrying about, going to ensure that they live perpetually in poverty and all of that. And I said to him, no, it is not illogical. I can explain it. And I said, look, let me use Tony's metaphor as the example. I referred to James Scott, whose book, The Moral Economy of the Peasant, begins with Tony's metaphor. It says, a peasant is a person who is so deep in water that even a ripple can drown him. Imagine that a ripple can drown you. Will you be thinking of tomorrow?
No.
All you think of is this 500 naira that I'm getting now.
Survivor.
1,000, I survive this moment. And in a way, and that is your perspective, it becomes like a drug addict.
Yes.
Nigerians have taken the tranquilizer of
so
abuse. That they are so abused that, like the drug addict who just wants a fix.
Yes.
They want these guys to give me that 1,000 naira.
Yes.
And let me get this momentary high. And so we have a tragedy in Nigeria. And I explained it years ago when I was part of an effort to create an international criminal court that we now have. That our institutions are so weak that our countries will keep descending further and further with the collapse of culture, that we need supranational institutions to be able to hold us back. And many people did not understand it.
Hold some people to order.
To account. Many people did not understand it at the time. I remember January 1997, I'll forget, a very cold day in Boston. I went to make a presentation to the editorial board of the Christian Science Monitor on why an international criminal court was important. After my, as you say, big grammar and everything, when I finished, one of the editors said to me, Pat, you are such an idealist. This thing you're talking about has no chance of happening. There will not be an international criminal court. 3 years later, the Treaty of Rome passed. And we got international. What I canvassed for were 2 courts. One, this court we have now, to try people guilty of genocide against their people.
Yes.
But the second one was an International Economic Crimes Court. When a group of people run their country,
Aground.
such that it is genocide, economic genocide against the people. I mean, look at the situation we have now. 2 of the most endowed countries on the continent of Africa,
Congo and Nigeria.
Congo DRC and Nigeria, are now projected to produce 40% of the most miserable people on the planet Earth in a few years. Just a few literal days or weeks ago, the World Bank showed that 25% of the most absolute poor in the world very soon will come from Nigeria. Now, I don't care what anybody thinks. I think people who run Nigeria should all be locked up for creating that kind of condition. But it doesn't seem to matter.
It's a serious problem we are in, and I'm asking. Wole Soyinka had said 25 years ago that his generation is a lost generation. Now, you and I have to say the same thing now. Our generation is a lost generation. That in spite of all your efforts through the years, the decades now, in spite of all the modest efforts we try to do, Nigeria is not any better for it. What can we do? What are new strategies, new methodologies that we can adopt to begin to plant new seeds for a new culture of leadership for the future? Let's say looking at 10, 15, 20 years time, if Nigeria still exists by then, what kind of methods can we put in place, strategies can we put in place to raise primary school children, secondary school children, and young people in the universities to start shifting their understanding of what authority is, of what leadership is, of what power is all about?
Well, first of all, I have tried to offer a new learning method, if it can be called that. I call it the pedagogy of the determined. And it's not so completely original to me. It is a doctrine of some thinking by some other person. Back in the late 60s and 70s, there was a Brazilian educator called Paulo Freire.
Yeah.
And Freire wrote the remarkable book on education that was called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And Freire tried to look at the minds of colonized people and to look at how colonialism educates, and to make the point that really what colonialism does is treat the mind like a piggy bank, where you come, you drop your 10 kobo, drop enough, so that the mind is capable of solving basic problems, but does not creatively project into the future.
Can't think outside the box.
Yeah. To then look, where should we be going? But Freire was a Marxist. And so Freire, who had a serious dose of people like Frantz Fanon and all of those, said what to do is pump people full of ideology. And then based on this ideological disposition, let them look at the kind of world they would like to see in 20, 30 or whatever number of years, and then choose the kind of learning that will enable them.
Take them from point A to point B.
I have argued, not being a Marxist, for good or for ill, that what we should do is expose young people from very early to thinking, thought, and the things that have brought change around the world. I would go to philosophy and teach young people about why America is the way it is, with the influence of Montesquieu, Baron Montesquieu, who looked at America in the very early nascent years and who influenced significantly the writing of the American Constitution. The whole doctrine of separation of powers and all of that came from his thinking. But his argument that the public space, the public sphere, has to be the arena of virtue. That to be able to be involved in public life, the common good has to be the dominant factor driving you. Interestingly, many, many years, centuries, in fact, later, our own leading political scientist Peter Eke, in the thinking that influenced perhaps one of the most outstanding seminal publications that's come out of Nigerian political science, Peter Eke offered what he was called the two publics. The idea of the two publics looks at civic culture. There's a public realm, there's a, beyond the private realm, everything that involves interests of others is the public realm. But it says in colonized Nigeria or Africa, the public realm really fractures into two. The primordial, the village that you come from, all of that. In that primordial culture, we invest morality. So you are unlikely to be able to steal
the goat of
your
the
village. You know the consequences, you know the sanctions. But you come to Abuja, where you are palmsec, you can carry the entire treasury. Your people will praise you for bringing it
celebrate you
for bringing it to them. Unfortunately, in the Peter Eke wrote that piece in 1975. Between 1975 and now, the collapse of culture in Nigeria has now moved, and people are even stealing the village
goat now.
Good. So this collapse of culture has brought us to a certain state. If you are going to be able to explain all of this to young people from early, show them how Asia transformed, what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore, how between Cardoso and Lula, Inácio Lula da Silva in Brazil, that country that was called a country of great potential but was never going anywhere, suddenly turned around. What happened in India? What happened in China? And then say to these young people, dream. What should your country, what should your village, what should your organization look like in 30, 40 years?
So, I mean,
what do you know, should you know to make you make that happen?
Help the young people to think.
To think.
Give them a model, an image of society as it ought to be.
Yes.
Of a good society that will be good for them and their children and children's children.
Absolutely.
Give them a picture of that.
Yeah.
Then, good practices as they exist already. Say, look, you are hearing of Singapore, one of the best developed countries in the world. How did they get to the place? Now, you are hearing of Japan. You're hearing of America. How did they get there? It is not enough to just dream to go and live in America. But how did those people get there? Project those for them and then help them to now say, okay, how do we get... We actually, in our Terra leadership training for young people, we actually get them to draw society as the kind of society they desire. And after they have drawn all the fine things in society that they desire, then I say, how will you get from point A to point B? We give them that challenge. And some of them come with wonderful ideas. Now, so it is a real... I know that it's not an easy task because you go to many secondary schools now and you say, ask young people what they want to be. I want to be rich and popular.
A politician, armed robber, even armed robber can come into
it. Because he says, I want to be rich and popular. And rich and popular in what? He says in anything. So I just want to be a celebrity. I want to be rich and popular. Now, so it's really going to be hard. And in any society, for us to be able to turn things around, we need a number of models. I mean, just look at Julius Nyerere, the kind of leadership he projected.
Yeah.
So it is not surprising that there are a few people coming up in Tanzania that are struggling to practice leadership kind of model that Julius Nyerere represented for them. So perhaps we will have to have a second segment to discuss this whole thing about the culture of leadership in Nigeria. Where we are now, it's not going to lead us home.
Yeah, but you know what is so important? That's why I frightened. What is responsible for human progress? In my estimation, in a lot of work that's been done, culture is very important for human progress. Yes. The book Culture Matters, which was edited by Huntington and Harrison, shows powerfully how culture shapes human progress. In fact, the subtitle of the book that captured the colloquium at Harvard that was fashioned for this is How Values Shape Human Progress. Another school argues very intensely that institutions are the most critical for human progress. So the Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto will tell you, for example, culture doesn't really matter, it's institutions. whatever, I am one of those who believe that both culture and institutions matter.
Yeah.
Now, how you build strong values and all of those are important for how you get where you are going.
Now, for institutions to emerge, you need forward-looking human beings. And then for you to even build values and culture, you need human beings that have some vision and some sense of purpose and meaning. So it is those human beings that are the problem in our own society.
Yeah. But you see, a majority of our people are good people. Unfortunately, what has happened is that those who have grabbed power are not the good people, let's be honest to ourselves. And that's the point I was going to when I started to respond to your question. You need role models. But leaders, the most important thing that leaders do is set the tone of culture. Just one good person. I mean, good not in terms of nice or not nice.
Yes.
One person who understands what he is doing
Yes.
can change the course of a society by being an influence on how culture evolves. We talk about Singapore. It was largely one man's vision, Lee Kuan Yew. And how impactful it was that one of his ministers, when he was caught discussing possible corruption, he was discussing it, preferred to commit suicide than for Lee to hear that he took a bribe. He says, no. So the tragedy of Nigeria is that we have had a few people who have been gifted by God from circumstance. And you had hoped that they would go there and say, I am the one who says this is not acceptable. But they always turn out worse than the other guys.
One after the other, they failed us.
Yes.
We'll leave this discussion at this point. Time is against us. End this segment. And then in the next segment, we will have to take on this whole question of culture matters. This whole segment of how do we now evolve a leadership culture, a culture of authority and use of power that will be for the benefit of the people. How do the crowd of people that are good people in this country, how do they play a critical role as citizens towards the emergence of the country of their dream? I've been speaking with Professor Pat Utomi about the Nigerian conundrum, the real problem with leadership and governance and economy in Nigeria today, where we have found ourselves and how we'll get out of this trap. We pray that someday the Lord will show us the way. Pat, it's been wonderful having you.
Thank you. Great pleasure, Father.
Those who have money, or even the very average person, he tries every penny he has, sells his property, and all. He now says, okay, they've killed the universities here. A-levels aren't even good here. You send your children abroad. You are running a risk.
Seriously.
You are bringing up, children are being raised in an environment that's not your own cultural environment. So they are going to imbibe funny values.
And come back and you don't recognize your own children.
Exactly. Then what investment have you made for your old age? They are out there in that country. And when they see the goodies out there, many of them, they become so skewed, they don't even want to come back. So you are going to have another generation of
Nigerians who cannot relate with Nigeria.
Then successful parents, in quotes, their children have done well academically. And they are going to be left to live their old age in misery and loneliness.
I have with me once again in the studio Professor Pat Utomi. Pat, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Father.
The last time we met, we discussed what has happened to leadership in this country, the leadership challenge. We discussed the degeneration in terms of even the manner we conduct elections and how the dismal indices about Nigeria, looking at where we're coming from and where we're heading. How all other countries have passed us and we have not even begun our journey upwards. We're still going down. Now, in this segment, I would like us to discuss this whole concept of Huntington and Harrison about why culture matters. You go to villages, you go to our towns and villages, and you see hordes of people who are ready to follow these guys who have captured the states who hold power. Just yesterday, I happened to be somewhere, and a local government chairman arrived, and there were up to 20 hangers on. 20 local government chairman, I'm not talking of a state governor. There were up to 20 aides that accompanied. We had only one chair for the local government chairman, but he arrived with 20 aides.
I can tell you one or two amusing stories around that. A couple of years ago, I was giving a talk at the University of Agriculture, Michael Okpara University of Agriculture in Umudike, near Umuahia. And after I finished speaking, the Vice Chancellor at the time was the chair of the lecture. And he said to me, you know what you're talking about? He said, last year, our best graduating student, he was so good, we thought, even though the system doesn't do the old thing that they used to do, our junior fellows and all of that, we said, we must retain this guy. So we brought him the great news of, Father, we're retaining him. So he would do youth corps and then stay on the faculty and be developed to go to trade into PhD. The fellow kind of looked at us and like something was wrong with us and promptly accepted to be PA, the local government chairman.
Oh, PA to the local government chairman. Somebody who got a first class in the university.
Yes.
Who the university wanted to retain and train as an academic.
Yeah. So it shows you where because as PA to local government chairman,
the resources,
he can cheat enough people, do enough things that after 4 or 5 years, there will be several houses, several 4-wheel drives in front of his home. There is such a collapse of culture in Nigeria that you think, goodness, who will rescue us? But we have to begin to save ourselves. And I've said this repeatedly, and I don't mean it. Unfortunately for the structure of Nigerian society, there are too few centers of prestige. In fact, as it is now, the only center of prestige is politics and power. In India, if you walk into a place, a senior Indian civil servant, some kind of PAMSEC enters.
Yes.
He is more prestigious or as prestigious as any minister entering, or a general. So you have a distribution of centers of prestige. People want to aspire to doing different things.
I mean, in this country, we used to have that for permanent secretaries.
Yes, but now the only thing that matters is that you are called a politician. And people invite them. When we started at the Lagos Business School, I give a very clear, what I said to my colleagues, look, one of the problems of this country is that people think that events have not started unless some funny politician arrives to open it or do something. And it makes events in Nigeria a joke because they will already arrive
2 hours late.
Or you wait for them, in the end, nobody arrives. Can we have a policy that says we will never invite politicians
to open the
events? Mm-hmm. And everybody kind of like, well, okay, we are generally agreeing. Then, one of our first major events, some alumni, some, of the members of the board said, look, we have our friend Anthony Ani, is finance minister. Let us invite him to. I said, okay, I wonder. I said, no, this is our friend from the private sector. I said, okay, fine. So, was a dinner at Lagoon, a restaurant as it was then in Lagos. Dinner, and part of what we did at the Lagos Business School was everything must start prompt. In fact, if you see a person driving like a mad person on the Badagry Akbaya Expressway in Lagos,
maybe
an executive going for an MBA class, because 1 minute after the class door closes. So that tradition, we're trying to build it up back in those days. And so dinner was to start at 7 p.m. No finance minister. 7:30, no finance minister. At this point, everybody was avoiding my eye because
you had won.
I had won. 8 p.m., no finance minister. At some point, we then started. At 20 to 9, the then PAMSEC in finance stumbles into the place and says he just got a phone call to go and represent the minister. he didn't even know what he was going for.
What an insult.
And then we all decided, okay, the party is not so stupid. Maybe that's what we should do. And then we had the turning of the sword, but what is now the current location of the Lagos Business School. And so we sent out invitations. The man who gave the most donation, Oba Otudeko, was going to turn the sword to get the place open. We didn't invite the governor. even though he was helpful to get our CFO, but we're following that tradition. I don't know what happened. I stopped by his place by some accident and somehow in conversation I said, we're turning the sword on Tuesday. He said, you see, my people have not shown me the invitation. Tomorrow they will start saying that I didn't know how to tell him that we didn't invite him. So I had to find a way to call and say, look, let us just send an invitation to his office since he now knows. And I said to him, we don't waste time. So if you arrive and we are finished, don't take offense, because that's how we do. We start on prayer. So I told my colleagues, I said, look, he wouldn't come on time anyway. So by the time he comes, we'll have finished. So there's no problem. 10 minutes to the time, we hear siren. I say it's not possible. And Bola Tinubu had shown up. We had no role for him. we had to quickly find something. So okay, let's get a ribbon. If somebody hold it there, he will cut the ribbon and we enter. And about to the car.
We'll open the
sword. So these are the things of public culture in Nigeria that we need to begin. I don't say it spitefully. People pay too much deference to people who hold public office.
I mean, when I do events, when Luke Terra organizes events, we don't call anybody to come and open. I mean, I'm the head of the organization. I declare it open.
Yeah.
Now, if any guest of honor comes and usually coming late, well, I mean, in fact, for me, you don't deserve to be introduced.
Yeah.
If you come late, you don't deserve to be introduced.
And by the way, we have to give credit. It often seems like we're talking negative. But Peter Obi brought something powerful to public culture in this country. If Peter arrives, when he was governor, if he arrived at say like a mass,
yes, he go quietly.
He will stay in the back
quietly,
corner, even though he's the governor. Shh, don't disrupt mass. Mass is taking place here. So Peter made that point.
And he makes sure he never went to those churches with any siren.
Yeah. But in fact, he hardly went to anywhere with any siren. In fact, one day I saw him. He had just arrived in Lagos. I saw him at the airport. And he said to me, senior, you come and hear this word. You've never. I said, no. And somebody came to him at the airport. He was, as governor, he was just walking by himself to go and get the flight. Somebody looked at him and said, hey, you are giving this governorship thing a bad name.
A bad name.
You see how you are going? Like somebody who has nobody. In Igbo, it sounds even nicer.
No, I mean, we need a few more such examples.
Yeah.
To change, like you are saying, Nigerians give too much deference to people who are in power.
Public office, yeah.
And I'm asking myself, is this real respect or some kind of psychological problem?
It's a psychological problem because the day that man is removed from that position, they will flee. So a friend of mine, I have so many of these stories. There's a fellow who was a commissioner in Lagos, and adulation, it was Ilea. The Rams could, a whole field was full. The day before that, he had been removed as commissioner. Somebody who sent him, who was sending something, was out of the country.
He did not know.
So when he phoned him to say, he said, oh, by the way, they developed cabinet yesterday. The person called his people. Have you delivered this in? He said, we were just about to leave his place. Take the ram back. But I think the one that
it is not respect.
No, it's not respect. The one that is even much worse, I remember a friend of mine was Minister of Transport many years ago, around 1990. My family was living in the UK because they had been transferred to the UK, and then I was recalled to come and manage the company in Nigeria. So he lived next door. I lived on Glover in Ikoyi, and he lived on Cooper, as it was back then. So out of boredom, coming back from work, I would first stop in his place, and we typically would eat together. You know him very well, a late friend of ours, And the day before, when I stopped by and we were having dinner, some fellow came. We gave the person a note to go and meet the then managing director of Nigerian Ports Authority to assist him. The person was looking for some assistance. Following day, the person obviously went. As I was coming back from Badagry Highway home, I heard on radio, that the cabinet had been dissolved. So I drove straight to his place and I met him, and we're kind of joking. Incidentally, so the only time I think I've ever met Mike Adenuga was outside his house. They were chatting. And then Adenuga left, and we went in to eat. The joke is that he was now my food supplier because I used to stop by to eat with him. While we were eating, the fellows that came the day before came. And then he went to go and meet them and came back, said to me, "Oh boy, do you remember the people that came yesterday?" I said, "Yes. They've just come to me. They were with the MD of Nigerian Post Authority, who was treating them very nicely. And say, oh, people were going to..." And then suddenly they heard on the news that coming up been resolved. He came out himself and told people, "Go and tell him that his time has passed."
He can't get this favor. His time has
Yes,
passed.
his time has passed. No, you can't tell him. It's...
So what we see, obeisance and deference and so on, it is just fake. It's not
fake.
It is not real.
You know, they won't even get a Christmas card the month after they remove from office.
Yeah. And so how do we help, let's say, young people who are desiring to join politics because of these pecs,
That you see.
because of these fake things? How do we help them to recognize that these are plastic? There is nothing to hold on to in this with sirens and bulala wielding, gun wielding, security aids, and so on and so forth. That all this.
Maybe somebody should pull together a collection of stories of after power. Because if they really know what many of these people go through after power, they will not want, again, sorry to return to Peter. Peter will be, because he's a pretty good example. Peter will say to you, you see, I don't want to enjoy something that after I leave the position, I won't be able to continue enjoying, and that is the truth of the matter. Again, I can tell this story. A friend of mine who was chief of air staff, I'll just leave his name out. Back in those days, military days, I was going to see him in his office one day as I was walking in. I had walked in, I was sitting with him. The chief of Air Force Logistics, there was an Air Vice Marshal Osho, was walking in to come and see him. Then he saw me and began to withdraw. "Oh, you're with somebody." And the then chief of Air Staff said, "No, come in. Pat is a friend. It's okay, it's okay." And he came in and said, "Chief, we're finding it difficult to get a plane to take you to Nairobi." He said, "What about the Barracks? Have you asked them?" I said, "Yes, we've called Tony Ukbo, Colonel Ukbo as he was then, General Ukbo, was principal staff officer to General Babangida, president. And he said that one of the aircraft took Madam Mrs. Babangida somewhere. What about that other one?" He said, "Oh, the Gulfstream." That's the Gulfstream. He said, "The Falcon is bringing back Vice President Aikomu from Abuja." He said, "What of Central Bank they are playing?" He said, "Abdul Kader Ahmed used the Central Bank plane to go for Friday prayer in Mecca." I'm not joking. He said, "What of the NNPC plane?" He said, "Rivanu Lukman went to receive a doctorate degree in Bologna in Italy. He went with the NNPC plane." He said, so then eventually he said, "Look, but what when the vice president comes back to Lagos, can't we then go after he has come back from Abuja?" He said, "Yes, that plane will be going to go and bring King Moshoeshoe to come on a state visit to Nigeria.
We have to go and bring him."
Oh yes, we have to bring him, same plane to bring him." So he said, okay. The compromise they reached was, okay, then he can take me, drop me in Nairobi, go and pick King Moshoeshoe, bring him. After I finish his visit, he's coming back, can pick me from Nairobi. So after I Vice Marshal Shaw withdrew, I said to my friend who was chief of air staff, I said, if it enter first class now for Ethiopian, boom, just arrive in the place. He said, "Pat, go and sit down. You don't understand these things." 2 years later, he was not chief of air staff. And he was running to catch Nigeria Airways at the airport. I said to him, He said, "Now why this country?" We need to really...
It's a real... So how... Let's get into the practicals now as a leadership coach. How do we change this culture? Right now, the scenario is that we have an empty public square, a naked public square. So naked that the young people growing up, they cannot see things to hold on to. The people like John Dewey in America, they were among those that helped, mold the culture of politics in America. John Locke, John Dewey, and so on and so forth. What is it that young people can look up to and hold on to? Okay, you have mentioned a former governor and the example he has given, but perhaps that is too small, one person. Here and there, we may need to get such models and project them to young people and show how they are as they are aging and show how the others are. Show the kind of friends they made, including friends among the poor, simple people that they made that remain their friends.
Yeah. I think a starting point is for people to ask themselves, who do they really want to be remembered as, or what do they, or how do they want to be remembered? Stephen R. Covey is the one who said you should begin with the end in mind.
Begin with the end in view, yeah.
So what is the end? How do you want people to think of you the day that you are being buried? What do you want them to remember? And if you have a good view of that, what will get me there? You see, many of these people we're talking about who have power, who are swaggering all over Nigeria, will not be remembered kindly. Whether they like it or not, that's the truth of the matter. And I can give you again another example, sadly, a personal one. Many years ago, I went to Enugu. There was a big event that had taken place. So almost anybody who was somebody in the southeast was in Enugu, and they were all trying to get out in those days of just 1 or 2 flights into Enugu. So the airport was full of who is who, and it was to get on the flight was something else. So we got number of first class or business class seats were available. I was fortunate to get one of them. It was an executive from Total of Anambra birth from Onitsha, who was also in there. Was just before the aeroplane got ready to take off, he got up from his seat, came to me, and said, "Can I shake you?" I was wondering why he was shaking me. It was unusual. He said, "When we get down in Lagos, I'll tell you." And when we got down in Lagos, he said, "Did you notice what happened?" I said, "No." He said, "You know that business class was full of who is who. At least 3 former governors of Anambra were sitting in that business class. And did you notice that everybody who came in ignored all of them, but nobody who entered this aeroplane failed to stop and say hello to you?" I said, "But I'm nobody." He said, "Yes, that is the real somebody, because they all thought there was something about what you represented and had contempt for all these men who had been governors." It just stuck in my consciousness.
Now, what it means is that the parameters for lasting, for meaningful life, the parameters are different from the kind of parameters that our people are showcasing right now. When people are not thinking of life after power, meaning life here in the world after power, when they are not thinking of when I am dead and gone, like you said, that what is important is for people to say, what do I want to be remembered for? And for us Christians, it is, what is it that gives your life meaning?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of your life? What tends to be happening that I am noticing is that I don't think a lot of the people who are in all these our privileged positions are asking what is the purpose of life. You had said in our earlier discussion that one of the evil influences of money is that when people have plenty of money, they don't think beyond the immediate.
They're disconnected from reality.
They are disconnected from reality.
The power that money seems to give them in terms of the sacrifice of the people around them lead them to becoming more and more separated
from reality.
So they don't even notice that people have problems.
Yes. I mean, but look at how they drive. The pilot vehicles that chase people off the road, and then the guy is reading his newspaper or pretending to be reading his newspaper. He's not looking at the people that are being chased out of the road. He's not looking at the lowly circumstances of the people that he is pretending to be leading. So, what is it that gives a so-called leader, what is it that gives his life meaning? Is it not supposed to be how I have succeeded in lifting people from point A to point B?
The word is impact. How has my leadership, my life had impact?
Yes. So, if there is no such impact, what is your source of satisfaction when you finish all your business running around in the day and you go to bed? I mean, I watch TV and I see that some leaders, they leave their state, They go and attend the funeral ceremony of somebody's father there. They go and get chieftaincy or chieftaincy title there. They go and get honorary doctorate there. They just keep moving. And I'm asking, do they ever sit down to ask, so what is all this
In the
about?
end, what is it about? What does it really
What's
do?
the meaning of all this?
So you get state resources, you abuse it, you use it, you fly around, and then...
So what?
Yeah, so what?
So perhaps in this new culture, in developing a new culture and moving our young people, it is to emphasize the whole issue of meaning, purpose.
Purpose, the purpose-driven life. Nice book that
Yes, Dick Warren.
Warren has written is a useful help. The leader who had no title.
Yes,
Robin Sharma's
Sharma.
book. All those help us begin to look at the question of what is purpose? Why am I here? What is the difference that I am making? But I think really more importantly, people's essence is the pursuit of happiness. How do you have a happy life if after that moment you know that everybody hates you? The truth of the matter, for those who are in power who don't realize it, the people who hate you, they may, out of fear, out of what they think can get for you now, say nice things in front of you. Excellency, that thing you're thinking about is correct, but they really despise you. So how do you live knowing that a few hours after you leave that position, almost everybody around you hates you?
Wait, talk about excellency. Do a lot of people who are addressed excellency, do they really think they are excellent or something?
Okay, let's leave excellency alone, because that is some silliness about this country. Thank God Jide Sanwo-Olu in Lagos has begged them to stop calling him excellency. Hopefully others will
follow the...
try and copy.
Because I keep asking, do they really believe that this title, this honorific title, do they really believe that they deserve it, or,
It's because they are empty themselves. They're looking for something to fill their emptiness. And so titles matter in their perception of what gives them meaning. But it's a failure to understand what meaning is really, truly.
Talking about emptiness inside, they say empty barrels make the loudest noise.
Indeed.
As religious people, as Christians, one of the things we should be struggling to do with people, especially with young people, is how to make them live from inside out, to make them full inside, to have meaning, to have purpose, to have a set of goals that they are pursuing, to recognize that my life has meaning to the extent that I touch people positively and being able to alleviate suffering and so on and so forth. Then I can smile as I'm going to bed. Now, if we begin to do, that, meaning in the little classes that we teach, the leadership group, to help people to recognize that what gives meaning is not my bank account. What gives meaning is not the size of my house, but that at my deathbed, because you say legacy, at my deathbed, what will be important? The number of rooms in my house? Useless.
By the way, many of my friends, and I don't want to accept myself, I live in a big house, but many of my friends are really miserable because their children are all abroad and have refused to come back.
So that big house...
That big house is, we don't know what to do with the big house anymore. So, and we're all living through this. What people should focus on is their self-worth, not their net worth. But we're obsessed with net worth. Whereas what truly matters is our self-worth. Happiness can never come from outside of you.
No.
Happiness is from inside of you.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we need to teach young people. Because what they are interested, they see. It goes back to Nkenwankwo's book, My Mercedes is bigger than yours.
I passed my neighbor.
So you keep looking at your neighbor's Mercedes. And I get, I was challenged to write an autobiography very, very early. The book To Serve is to Live was written when I was like 38 years old because a publisher was pressuring me to write an an autobiography. And I said, at 38, what do I have to say? He says, no, young people will learn something from your life. So I wrote the book, To Serve is to Live. And one of the examples I used in that book that influenced me significantly, I was very friendly. One of the things I did just coming out of grad school was find a few mentors, older people that I was very friendly with. And I went to them every week. Once a week, I visited each of them. And I would just chat about anything. I think I got a better education from that than the PhD I got. One of them was Babi Asika, the other one was Pius Okibo, and then of course in later years people like Dr. Molayole and co. But the visits to Babi Asika particularly influenced me. Babi Asika was a very deep thinker. You ask him a question about something that happened in Onitsha or somewhere, he will start with Socrates, Aristotle, and then end up with Abafemi Awolowo.
Because everything is connected to everything.
It's all connected.
Yes.
But ultimately, the big lesson is that Asika, after he left being administrator of East Central State, people thought he had accumulated the whole world and all of that. Babi Asika did not. He was living in somebody's guest chalet in Ikoyi. A man who was his principal secretary when he was
administrator.
Yeah, was living in his guest chalet in Ikoyi for years. And he was driving 1504. Used old 504. But it never stopped to amaze me that every time we showed up at a public event, people who drove in Rolls Royces would run to come and greet him. I thought to myself, it's not the size of the car.
No.
It's the man.
Yes.
It was a big lesson for me, and it's in the book, To Serve is to Live.
Yeah. It's not the size of the car, but it is the man. And I thank God for you, and I pray that particularly the Center for Values in Leadership, which is directly focused on these issues, that all the activities of that center and the young people that are engaged with you there, that over time we will, through these efforts, see a new Nigeria emerge.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you very much.